life just happens, right? And we very rarely stop in the middle of our day and just laugh. It can really unite and bond us. It can reset. The studies are incredible.
Welcome to Believe in Progress, the American Association for Cancer Research Foundation podcast. Join us and be inspired by the incredible stories of those who have faced cancer with strength and resilience, and the medical professionals who are working tirelessly to find new treatments and ultimately a cure. Believe in Progress isn't just about the science of cancer. It's about the human side of this disease. Together, we can make progress in the fight against cancer and bring hope to those who need it most. Welcome to the Believe in Progress podcast, where we shine a light on the remarkable individuals leading the change in cancer research, patient advocacy, and survivorship. I'm Mitch Stoller, your host, and the Chief Philanthropic Officer at the AACR, the American Association for Cancer Research. Today, we have the extraordinary Saranne Rothberg joining us as a stage 4 cancer survivor, citizen scientist, comedy expert, and patient advocate who turned her 3-decade cancer journey into a global mission of hope, laughter, research, and healing through the ComedyCures Foundation. She's been featured on many major media outlets, including CNN, PBS, Fox, NBC, Good Morning America, and the New York Times. She is Oprah's hero in Oprah's best-selling book, Live Your Best Life. Saranne's Beating Cancer Daily podcast, after just 1 year, is now helping patients in 66 countries on 6 continents with over 250 episodes. Cancer Care News recently ranked Beating Cancer Daily as a top 5 cancer podcast, along with Johns Hopkins and ASCO. Her strategies and survival story were integral in the research and success of the New York Times best-selling book, Radical Remission, which is now published in 22 languages, and it immediately became the #1 cancer book and #1 self-help and motivation books simultaneously on Amazon. Saranne has also collaborated with Fortune 500 companies, leading medical centers, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the National Cancer Institute, U.S. military, and many prestigious universities and nonprofits. Saranne's work transcends healthcare boundaries, bringing joy and therapeutic edutainment to those facing cancer and other challenges. She creates innovative global wellness-related programming in all media formats, collaborating with a myriad of healthcare professionals, thought leaders, researchers, and entertainers to start conversations, share ideas, stimulate research to find solutions across healthcare and many industries. Saranne has won many awards and grants and recently spearheaded 2 groundbreaking pilot survivorship studies, the Mindset and Metastatic Cancer Research Study and the Cancer Health Coach Impact Study. AACR called her Mindset study innovative and exciting for her use of AI to improve the lives of advanced cancer patients. Saranne presented her first abstract at AACR in Orlando and was honored to be an AACR 25th anniversary survivor and scientist participant at the 2023 AACR annual meeting. Saranne Rothberg launched the ComedyCures Foundation from her chemo chair in 1999 by throwing a chemo comedy party. Today, she is cancer-free, helping millions of patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals rediscover their funny bone, hope, mojo, and purpose. Join us as we delve into her inspiring story and the transformative power of hope, faith, and a comic perspective, and how ComedyCures is making a difference in the lives of millions around the world. Saranne, it brings me great joy to have you here at AACR today. Welcome to Believe in Progress podcast.
I am so excited to be here for so many reasons, but I'm in my hometown.
That's
it's
right.
My birthplace.
Philadelphia.
I'm just so excited every time I come back. Mitch, I think that I just need to bring a little ComedyCures to this podcast.
Okay.
So if you'll indulge me.
Of course.
Okay. This might be the only time that we burst into laughter on your podcast.
There you go.
So I'm going to set a timer and we are going to laugh for 15 seconds.
Okay.
And I want to invite your crew and I want to invite you listening to do this. And I'll tell you my reasons why after, but I'm not going to tell a joke. We're just going to go for it.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Oh, 15 seconds.
No laughter police, any kind of laugh.
You got it.
There we go. How did that feel?
It felt pretty good, actually.
Good. Now, why did we do that? We did that because people are driving, people are cooking. We were rushing to get here in traffic. Life just happens, right? And we very rarely stop in the middle of our day and just laugh. So that's a laughter break. And I wanted to start that off because I know that we're going to talk about my diagnosis and we're going to talk about the years I spent battling. And some of that can feel very heavy and very scary. And I just wanted to reset and literally get us all on the same page, on the same breath. And so that's what laughter does. It can really unite and bond us. It can reset. The studies are incredible. One of your scientific leads here, John Zhang, sent me 220 research studies that were done on cancer, laughter, positivity. And so I felt that the best way to kick this off would just be with a laugh.
Love it. Love it. I see your lapel pin says live, love, laugh.
Yes.
Right?
I make these and we use them as a fundraiser for my organization, the ComedyCures Foundation. But I have worn this message every single day of my cancer journey. And I started just giving them away because people would say, oh my gosh, where could you get that? And I would literally just take it off and hand it to people, and it got really expensive. So I made a Live, Love, Laugh bracelet.
Nice.
Based on the Live Strong concept.
Yep.
Right? I'll trade you. We'll do yours.
Sure.
I'll do mine. And so now this concept is very much identified with my 31-year journey here.
So can you take us back to your journey and how you originally were diagnosed and, tell us a little bit about that?
I wish I had been diagnosed. It went 6 years.
You were misdiagnosed.
Yeah, I wish I'd been diagnosed. I was in my late 20s. I had just given birth and I was breastfeeding my daughter, except my left breast was not cooperating. And so I went to 11 doctors over 18 months. And they just said nothing, that it was nothing, including a surgeon who said it was a breast infection from breastfeeding. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't have a fever. I don't have swelling at the site. Okay. And no one ordered a scan, not one scan out of 11 different professionals. So I went along with my life, and 6 years, I started to get progressively sicker, and no one could explain why I was getting sicker until finally a jelly bean-sized tumor popped out against the skin in the left upper quadrant and of my left breast. And that's exactly where I was saying I had an issue.
Right.
And so at that minute, it went, fast forward tsunami the way it does when you get diagnosed, especially when people have made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And so I went full throttle into breast cancer treatment. I had 3 surgeries, 44 radiation treatments, over 2+ years of chemotherapy, and actually nothing worked. It may have slowed it a little bit, but I was eventually told there were no more studies, clinical trials, there was no medication really to get my affairs in order. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm a single mom with sole custody.
Right.
I got to figure this out.
Right.
My first chemo treatment, I threw a chemo comedy party in New York City.
Okay.
And from that minute forward, I don't think cancer was ever the same.
Didn't stand a chance against you, right?
No.
So how did you come up with that idea? I mean, were you already like in show business or comedy prior to this?
Yeah, I had produced over many different projects, but I had worked on over 40 productions with Dick Clark, another Philadelphia.
I remember that guy.
And
American Bandstand. Right?
Yes. And so I really knew that world, and I was in charge of scouting new comics. So I had a deep, footprint in the comedy world. I really understood comedy and who was funny and had a sensibility that was a bit cleaner because I had to find comics for television.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I decided that I loved comedy. It had been part of my whole story since I was a little girl, and that I needed to surround myself with comedy. But it was inspired by Norman Cousins.
Yes.
Norman Cousins had written the book Anatomy of an Illness and then a second book. And he talked about his battle with a life-threatening disease and how when he laughed, the impact that that had on his body, mind, and spirit. And that was then studied. But when I was at USC as a college student, they had an excerpt of Norman Cousins' book in a magazine that I read on campus. I can remember it plain as day, and it deeply imprinted on me. So the night that I was diagnosed, it was a Friday night, and they said, I'm sorry, the cancer team has gone home for the night. Could you come back on Monday? And immediately I thought, Norman Cousins, I have to get every stand-up comedy tape that I can find. That's how long ago it was, because I was misdiagnosed 31 years ago and then started treatment 25 years ago. So we had videotapes.
So for 6 years, you were dealing with cancer, and they didn't know it.
Nope. And they were attributing different things that were happening to me for different causes, but they missed the whole cancer diagnosis. And what's so interesting is that I am so passionate about early detection.
Yes.
Because I was so early, and partly because my grandmother had died in her 40s.
Breast cancer?
Yes, and from complications from breast cancer. And so I was so vigilant and then, ignored. And I'm not a shy person, as you know.
I know that.
That's how come I went to so many doctors. But eventually you go on with your life. And so when this happened, I knew I had to play catch up. I also had been, I'm a single mom at the time, and I was going through this really brutal divorce. And so my daughter had been through so much. The idea of levity and joy and play as a staple in my cancer journey seemed like a good parenting strategy also.
How old was she at this time?
5 turning 6.
Okay, so pretty young.
Yeah. So I went to the video store from the hospital, got every stand-up comedy tape that Blockbuster and West Coast Video would loan me. I went to 2. That's how hardcore this was. And I came home and I got her to bed as fast as I could. And then I collapsed on the ground crying because this was huge. Yep. How was I going to juggle this divorce and sole custody and also this cancer story that had been delayed? It was so much.
Yeah.
And so I saw the stack of comedy tapes and I was like, I have to put in Eddie Murphy. I have to put in Richard Pryor. I have to put in this list. And I started laughing. And what I realized was when they say you have cancer, and I've heard so many people on your podcast who've had cancer say you have cancer. I didn't hear it like that, Mitch. I heard it like the devil from The Exorcist.
Right.
It was, you have cancer. And I was so
scared. Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, I got to get that voice out of my head. So I started watching the comedy and I didn't laugh. I cried. I sobbed. But I said, you know what? It worked for Norman Cousins. Maybe it's going to work for me. And so I literally forced myself to hear the setup, hear the punchline, and laugh. And then it turned into tears, like complete sobbing with like it was like a bit manic and psychotic. But what I realized was that this guy was right. His body of research that he had ignited was correct. When I laughed, I didn't feel like I was going to die. And when I laughed, life felt normal. It didn't feel like the tsunami of cancer.
Right.
So I stayed up all night listening to this comedy marathon. And when my daughter awakened, I said to her, you're going to be my humor buddy. And she goes, is that like a playmate? It's like, yes. And then I go, and we're going to make an appointment to laugh. And she goes, is that like a Play-Doh? And I said, yes, yes, that's exactly it. And then I thought, how dumb am I? Like, she got this. This is just what I forgot, like going through a divorce and not feeling well and all the things that adults go through to become chronically serious as we get older. And then you throw a cancer diagnosis on that, and it's crazy.
Right.
So that was the start of it, not a charity, just how we could use it as a family strategy.
How did that go over though in that first, session with people? I could imagine there were other people getting their chemo and things. I wonder what their reactions were. Just like my reaction when you made me laugh for 15 seconds, which was positive.
Okay, first of all, this was a true Saranne party. I brought in sparkling cider and party favors and little sandwiches and dessert. I mean, I threw a party in the chemo facility.
All right.
Right? And then I went person to person and I said, I'm going to have a chemo comedy party. Would you like to join our comedy event? And some people were so desperate for entertainment and to be distracted. Some people were so scared they wanted the distraction. Some people were nauseated, so they wanted the distraction. And then there were a few naysayers who just crossed their arm and they're like, what's so funny about cancer?
Angry people, right? Yeah.
And so I said, I have this weird comic perspective. I can share it with you. And then I intentionally told them the worst joke I could think of. And then they went, that's a terrible joke. I could tell you a better joke, but I hooked them. That was it. Yep. And then everybody kind of gathered around, and then slowly but surely, the nurses, the phlebotomists, the techs, the people that were coming in to sell drugs from the pharma companies, the oncologists, they all kind of gathered around. It was like a magnet or moth to flame. And I looked around the room and I went, whoa, I just changed cancer. Like the sight, the taste, the touch, the vibe, the feeling, the energy. Like this chemo comedy party did something. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think of a charity. Mm-hmm. It was really when the nurse said, it was a Paula Poundstone joke about an airline. And the nurse said, don't tell the punchline. I have to give a push. And I was like, wait, the push? That's adriamycin. That's the scary one. That's the one that's going to singe my hair off. And wait, our comedy is like as important as that? So that's when I realized we had really done something that day. And then she came back and it was time for my push, gave me the push. And then I felt it. Like I felt it course through me. I felt it come up through my nose into my head. Felt the whole thing. It was powerful. And then I put my head back and then I sat up and I just said, I know why I'm here. And everybody was like, yes, dear, we know why you're here. And I was like, no, like why I'm really here. And they said, why? And I said, because I have to bring chemo comedy parties to everyone. I have to show people that we can infuse humor and joy and laughter, and we can build a community right here in the chemo room, because we're all going through this. We don't have to be in isolation, in fear, in drama. We can have this strategy. And that was it. That was the minute that I knew that my life was going to be devoted.
It's interesting. My brother's a cancer survivor, Paul. And
great episode, by the way. I'm going to give you a plug. You have to watch Paul's episode.
He's great. He's got great stories and has lived a wonderful life. But I was with him on his first chemo treatment, and it was very cold there, right? And so I could see if you had the infusion of comedy, what that could have done, right?
Infusion,
right?
Look at you writing comedy right now.
See, you're rubbing off on me.
I'm rubbing off.
But I can visualize back however many years, 20 years ago, what it was like in that room. And, and there were multiple people there and it was quiet and dark, and comedy would have made a big difference, I think. And, he was scared that first time. I was scared just as his brother sitting there, but it would probably have lightened things up a lot to do that.
We're definitely a family opportunity. I saw that right away. What you're explaining is that it's not just the patient. I actually say the caregiver has it harder because as the patient, we can get up every day and decide how we're going to approach the world. And the caregiver is just at our whim. So I think after being both a stage 4 cancer survivor, patient and survivor, and then a caregiver, that it's harder to be the caregiver. But that's why we include everyone. And not only do we include the patient and the caregiver, we include the medical staff because, look, I only have to cope and deal with this as one person.
Yeah.
They have to do this all day long.
Yeah.
Crazy people like me. So I really felt that all of us needed this respite. All of us needed to learn about comic perspective and really how to use it. I call it my superpower. I think it is why I got through so much treatment. And then when I was told, get my affairs in order, I was just like, I don't think so.
Right.
I mean, I'll do the due diligence stuff I have to do, but I have a lot more fight in me and I'm going to figure this out. And I think because I did have this muscle, this resiliency that was built up through this comic perspective, that I was able to cope with so much.
So when was ComedyCures Foundation born? When did that happen?
In the chemo chair.
Okay.
And then I went home from that first chemo treatment and I threw my guts up. Like literally, I had a legal pad and I was vomiting in a trash can and writing out the entire vision that came to me. And a girlfriend was caring for me and she was like patting my head and taking the vomit away. And she was crying and begging me to stop writing on this pad. But I had seen the whole thing on this moment in this chair. It was so clear what I had to do and how I had to do it. And so I just had to get it out of me. It's like I had to vomit out the charity and I had to vomit out the vomit. And that was it. And the 25 years here have just been that original pad. And then ACR came in and mixed it up a lot for me.
But did you, on that pad, did you write your vision down of what it is you were trying to accomplish? And like, did you put tactics down as well and all the above?
It's a lot of vomiting, Mitch. I was
Beyond
really
that,
sick.
yes.
It was a long night.
Yeah.
But yes, and for example, this laugh line. I literally saw this laugh line in the chemo chair. So my phone number is 1-888 ha, 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 ha. That's it. And if you press 1, you'll hear a professional comedian. If you press 2, you'll hear an amateur like Mitch. I'm going to have you tell us the jokes.
So let's do a tumor humor.
Yes.
Can we laugh at cancer?
Yes.
How come I have to pay a fortune for a treatment that's been in the lab for years when chimpanzees get the latest stuff for free? Okay. Your turn.
So let me explain. I challenged myself to write 31 days of comedy about cancer.
So these are your written jokes?
So basically what I did was I took a pain point or a question or something that had come up for me or in conversation with somebody else about cancer, from the patient side, the survivor side, the spouse side, the caregiver side, the doctor side. And then I looked at that pain point and then I said, okay, what's humorous about that? It didn't have to be, drop down hilarious, but what's humorous about that? And so I did that for 31 days. And people said you could never do that. You're not going to find 31 days about comedy. And someone actually challenged me and said that they would make a donation to the ComedyCures Foundation every time someone liked or shared it. And so I said, okay, great. Well, within just a few moments, this thing went to $23,000. And I don't think that person was ever expecting to spend that. So they stopped the funding way before the 31 days, but made a significant donation.
Nice.
And then this thing went viral. So if you look on the internet under cancer and comedy, all these little jokes come up as memes all over. And so I realized, wow, like this perspective is important. So I put it on the ComedyCures.org website, but I explain as a teaching tool how I got from the pain point to the funny. Because look, I can entertain you. I could do a whole hour on cancer and comedy. So can other comedians that have had cancer. But the bottom line is I want to teach you how to tap into your comic perspective.
Got it. Can I try one more?
Yeah,
Because I think this one, many of us can all relate to this particular one. My colonoscopy just confirmed it. I'm beautiful inside and out. Right? So that's a good one. Get a laugh. I even got the guys to laugh on that.
Because your delivery was incredible.
It was a little better, right?
Oh my gosh. It was, first of all, it was perfect. But we don't care. Like, we teach that you laugh even if you don't understand the joke.
Right.
You laugh if you don't think it's funny.
Okay.
You laugh if that was the same joke that you were going to tell. And the reason why is because your body, mind, and spirit don't care.
This is cool because, like, I'm in a laboratory today. I'm getting a whole lesson on comedy and delivery, and probably make me better for it. Right? Once I get this, I have a question. When you were doing the scouting for Dick Clark, any famous people that you actually, I guess, scouted, and then they went on to become like great comics that we would recognize?
Yeah, so many. I mean, not just comics, like all the celebrities that I worked with, because we did some of the biggest celebrity shows. So we do the Golden Globes, the American Music Awards. I did Super Blooper and New Practical Jokes, the big joke show, Friday Night Surprise. So it was this amazing opportunity really to just get comfortable around the most famous people. And, a funny story was with Eddie Murphy. I was in a hotel, like a small boutique hotel in LA, and I was just staying in this hotel, and I heard this outside on the balcony. And I went running out. I thought I needed to give somebody CPR. And when I ran out, the balcony touching mine, it was Eddie Murphy laughing.
Okay.
But I literally ran out to give somebody CPR. And he just thought it was so funny that a complete stranger would hear him laughing and then run out and just selflessly start wanting to give CPR. So he actually invited me over and a champagne and a big party. So I got to know Eddie that way. I mean, there were so many great up and coming comics that we scouted that I found at Dick Clark.
Did that teach you a lot? Did you learn from them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been a student of comedy since my first comedy event my dad took me to as a kid with Jackie Mason. And to come full circle, Jackie's brother had cancer. And when Jackie heard about this single mom, 98-pound bald woman who's bringing comedy into the trenches of cancer treatment, he actually offered to do my first fundraiser.
Really?
Yeah. And so it was a very quiet night. There could be no invitations, no paparazzi. He did it for me privately. So I just invited the who's who of who in New Jersey. You had to say yes on the phone and give your credit card right away, or you couldn't come. And then literally Jackie showed up and then teased me of, I just laugh, ha, 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 and I'm going to cure from cancer. But it was an unbelievable evening.
He was a great stand-up comic, right? Yeah. And did he not do a Broadway show?
He did a couple.
Jackie Mason, one man act or something like that.
Yes, he did a couple. And we stayed in touch, and they loved the night that I gave for them. And I actually had the Pope do the Pope's sound man do the sound for the night. And Jackie could not believe that I got the Pope's sound man to do the sound for his night. So we really bonded over that. And that's how Comedy Cures got started. And from that point forward, it just has been like a really big comedy party. I don't think I realized that I would be able to impact much bigger ideas like clinical trials or early detection or survivorship in the way that I can and am, and philanthropy too. I really just was trying to help one patient at a time within my arm's reach in the chemo room. And then because of technology and then the media propelling this forward, I've been able to do things on 4 continents live and
awesome.
6 continents
That's awesome.
digitally.
So what is the foundation doing today? Like, I mean, they're still doing very much what you were doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or new things?
Oh, every day is new.
Yeah.
I was driving here and I got a bing and I looked and somebody from cerebral palsy had reached out because there's a high incidence among people who have cerebral palsy getting cancer. And so they just reached out to see if our engine and what we do and how we bring humor into the conversation and use it to really communicate through barriers with people, if we would consider helping them in that world. And those calls and emails come in all the time. I mean, some of the more illustrious ones are the United Nations. I've done so much at the United Nations to bring conversations forward in healthcare, including the first digital health conference for the first ladies from around the world. I hosted that and helped produce that. And then launching the 52nd Congress to End Violence Against Women and Girls Worldwide, producing the first comedy event in the history of the United Nations, and going to Geneva and doing that in Geneva at the World Health Organization. So I think the reason why people are so attracted to this is because we can take very serious and very important conversations. And because we can very authentically and sensitively look at the humor that could be surrounding that, we can have discussions that normally people are very uncomfortable having. And also we can bring people into a conversation who would be so resistant. But because of this portal that we walk through, and because of this very authentic approach, it really resonates in people's hearts. So I always say what comes from the heart goes into the heart. And that's kind of like my motto on all of this. And to be able to start doing research is just mind-boggling. And to have AACR like think it's cool research and want to talk about it and help propel that has just been mind-boggling. I didn't see that in the chemo chair.
So Saranne, we're here in Philadelphia, the AACR headquarters. How did you get introduced to AACR? And then, from there, we could talk a little bit about I'd love to hear about your experiences with the SSP program.
First of all, I like big. This is like, I can't even explain how AACR has changed my life. And this is to anyone. I cold called AACR. I literally knew nothing about AACR. And what prompted me was I was keynoting at Stanford at this big cancer symposium. And it was like the who's who of who. It's all your people. I mean, now that I'm more involved in AACR, top people from the FDA, top people from the NIH, NCI, just leaders. And there's me, right, as the token funny lady survivor among these giants. And as they normally do, they take us out to eat, a group of the speakers. And I'm sitting next to Nobel laureates, right? And we're talking, and they're very curious about me. I guess they hear each other talk all the time. Right. So I'm telling them about how I detected my cancer, how I had all these symptoms that I knew I had cancer. No one was listening to me. So that was a path. And then how do I use comedy in this instance, and so forth and so on. And so they basically surrounded me at a dinner and said, you must write, you must publish, you must do research. We know what you're saying anecdotally. We see it every day in our practice, but you have an opportunity to really change cancer. And I'm looking at these people who are so lauded and decorated, and I'm just like, Does anybody here realize my last science class was astronomy at USC decades ago?
Right.
So I went online looking for someone scientifically to help me maybe write an article, because I figured in all humility, let me just write an article.
Right.
And this beautiful angel from AACR, Carrie, called me back. And she just started to ask me questions and said she would try to help me find somebody that could help shape it in a more scientific way. And we just started to talk more and more. And then she literally said to me, I think we need to know about what you're doing in a bigger way. And then she called you and she called John and we all got on a Zoom.
Right.
And that's like, I went down the AACR rabbit hole and I never want to get out. You guys are amazing.
We don't want you to get out. Yeah. So then you applied for the SSP program for last year's annual meeting, right? Is that correct?
No, what happened was, this is so crazy. Again, I truly believe there are no accidents. I don't think it was an accident I was in a chemo chair.
Yeah.
I just think that my attitude was, okay, God, you put me in a chemo chair. What am I supposed to see? And how am I supposed to help? That was my full attitude through this journey. So just to show how things can happen just in an everyday way, someone's mom had an article that was written about my laugh line on the refrigerator with a magnet. That person happened to be working with Marriott. That woman saw this on our mom's refrigerator and said, "Moms, what's this?" And her mom said, "Oh, this woman's helping me through cancer treatment. I call her Laugh Line every day." So the woman said, "I have to take this." And she's like, "No, don't take it." She said, "I'll give it back." She took it to Marriott headquarters. There were several senior people at the time. One has since passed away, the chairman, who had cancer. And literally, I got a call that I had to go to Marriott headquarters right away. And I'm busy. We have a massive waiting list at our charity. And I'm like, I can't get there right away, but insisting. So I show up there and it turns out that they want me to do their World Health Day at Marriott for thousands of employees. So I go. Fast forward, I do this. Fast forward years later, there was a woman in the audience who didn't have cancer at the time, but got advanced cancer, diagnosed with advanced cancer. She called me right before the pandemic and said, "I've given a grant to 2 major cancer institutions, 2 of the biggest in the world, and they did incredible research, but our grant's small and the world didn't know about it. I bet if I give you my grant, you will do something incredible in survivorship and the world will know about it." And I said the joke that I just said to you about not having a big pedigree in science. And she said, "I know that with your connections, you will find scientists." And I wish I'd known about AACR at the time. I didn't. But I called a great neuroscientist out of California that I had interviewed at a big healthcare conference and asked her if I could use her artificial intelligence, because I felt that if I could use artificial intelligence along with comedy, that I could help advanced cancer patients improve the quality of their life by strengthening their mindset, giving them strategies that we could then study and then move them forward in the same mindset that I used. And so that is what happened.
Is this before like AI became like a everyday word?
Years ago.
Okay.
I mean, she called me in 2019 and I had just interviewed this young genius who wasn't even 30. She's since been named Forbes 30 Under 30, Dr. Catherine Grill. But she gave me her algorithm. And together with another expert in integrative health and psychology, this woman had an expertise in stress management. The 3 of us put together this study. So they were responsible for all the science. I did all the content, and it was my construct of how we would teach it, but they were in charge of studying it. I wanted to be arm's length away from the data. And we proved at the height of the pandemic that teaching these strategies virtually. Now, virtually, everybody in the world was going crazy because we were on shutdown. But in this 8-week study, we showed that we reduced depression over 18%. We reduced stress over
cancer patients,
advanced cancer patients. And we reduced stress over 15%. We reduced anxiety 10%. And we increased self-empowerment during the pandemic 8%. It was incredible results, right? But here's where AACR also said, whoa. I had participants from 10 countries and 24 states, and they were applying so quickly that I couldn't get the Google eligibility survey shut off fast enough because this was just a small feasibility study. And people were just pounding the eligibility study. So I got it shut off as quickly as I could. And then we actually did a bigger sample because I couldn't get it shut off and I wasn't going to tell people you can't do this study. So we had such phenomenal results. And AACR explained to me that is not typical.
Right.
That's not what happens in the trial world, in the study world. What did you do? And so I realized that I have a very different way of approaching studies than the scientific world. And that one of the things that I want to do, because now I've had success in two different studies, which we can talk about in a minute, getting people rapidly enrolled, that I think I have something that I need to add to that conversation. We had hundreds of millions of views of my little baby tiny study. I mean, this is crazy, honestly. And so I realized that I'm tapping into something not only in attracting people, but also in the way that I look at survivorship. And so John from the research, John Zhang here at AACR, he literally said to me when he read this study come across through PR, he contacted me and he said, you have just changed cancer. One, because the way you're using artificial intelligence, and two, with advanced cancer patients. These are two things that we weren't thinking about.
Right.
And so he thanked me and I was like, I was crying. I actually cried because I'm just one person with a crazy imagination, right? But that's what I want to say. I meet people like me all the time who have these great ideas from the patient perspective, and AACR has a way to give us voice and empower us. And that's why when I found out about the SSP program, I really wanted to be part of it. Before I applied, AACR asked for my abstract. And I was like, I don't know how to write an abstract. I write comedy. So I was like, it's probably going to be the funniest abstract they ever got. But I learned how to do it and I submitted it. I pressed send and I thought, I am never going to be asked, never. And then I got a call that I was accepted to present at this huge convention of 20,000+ global thought leaders. For anybody that's a patient or a survivor, like this is like my top of my head just blew off.
Super Bowl, right?
But that's just the anticipation. When you go to this thing, it's insane.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I accepted to go. And then after I accepted to go, I was asked if I would apply to the program, which I didn't know about. And I applied and I didn't think I'd get in again, because like there are like nurses that do it and doctors that do it and people that have been in hardcore advocacy in Washington for decades. And I'm like the lady that makes healthcare funny, right? And I have this one successful study. And when I got accepted, again, crying, because what an unbelievable blessing to be accepted into this program, and then you don't even get what you're in for.
Right.
It is the Super Bowl of patient advocacy, honestly.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, and just the tools that SSP gives us as advocates, and then the entree that we get to thought leaders. Now, I heard an episode. I'm going to plug all your episodes.
Okay, that sounds good.
If you haven't heard
appreciate that,
Howard Brown's episode from Cancer Town, or Haley Dinnerman's episode from Triple Negative, these are all friends and colleagues and advocates. You have to listen to all of them because they will inspire you to realize the difference that one person can make.
No
and
doubt.
Then as you build that energy. So just in terms of SSP, not only does it give us a medical degree in cancer, you fast forward our knowledge of the intricacies of a cancer diagnosis and cancer research. I literally had my cell phone, a notepad, and a computer. And as they were speaking, I am looking up all different things because this is such an intensive education in the biology of cancer and research of cancer. So if that had been it, that would have been worth going to this convention.
Right.
But it's not it. You know, that I think somebody said this, but there's that song Dianu, it would have been enough. It just kept coming. And then day by day, we're introduced.
That's a song, ladies and gentlemen, that is sung at Passover. Right?
And it's just like, we're grateful for this.
Right.
That would have been enough.
Right.
But we're grateful. And that's what I was hearing in my head the whole time because I think funny. But just then, meeting the heads of these different major organizations, with AACR being the brain trust, right? And then bringing in all these different organizations. And they want to hear from a patient perspective.
Yep.
What pain points are we hearing? What do we need help with? What could they be doing better? And in all humility, it wasn't just lip service. This was honest feedback that they wanted. And then again, to sit with scientists and Nobel laureates and be able to really talk about, for me, this passion of early detection. I believe that I have my finger on the pulse of early detection. I just think that there is something in the strategies and the symptoms that I experienced and that I've shared with major researchers around the world. They've brought me in to the NCI, to City of Hope, to Berkeley, Stanford, to really talk about how I knew and how I've known repeatedly over decades with people, and how I found my own cancer 4 times, different times in the journey, and knew that it wasn't working, the treatments. And so I think that it's time for me to really put effort into not only that, but as I said, into sharing these secrets of the trial acquisition. I think it's a broken model.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are trying to fix it. And I think I want a seat at that table. Early
detection is a big deal. And it's a big priority of AACR's as we're starting to develop strategies around that. So definitely keep you in mind when we think about that. If you don't mind me asking, just I have one other thing that I'd like to ask you about is you grew up with a love for art, which I recently experienced for the first time. Would you mind just chatting a little bit about your art and your dad? And I think that's pretty special stuff.
Yeah, and I want to honor him, and I also want to explain just how that relationship gave me the strength for fighting cancer, and now it's a full circle moment in philanthropy. But it really fueled my second study also. So I'm going to tell a mixture of story. So I was raised by a single father in Philadelphia, which was quite unique back in the 60s and 70s. And my dad, because he was a much older dad, he had me at 40. And because he was a bit of a rule breaker, he always taught me, says who. And then he sent me to a very different school. He sent me to a school that was fueled by kids from the projects, not to my neighborhood school that was squeaky clean and new. And so I grew up in Philadelphia with kids that were very poor. A lot of them were on welfare, didn't have food at night. The walk home was dangerous. And yet my dad allowed me to go to their houses for play dates and be part of that world also. And so I became a street fighter very young, very, very young in Philadelphia. I understood what gangs were. I was beat up. I was in an all-black gang in Philadelphia as the only white person. And so I learned a different side of the world than the world that I was raised in. Now, the world that I was raised in was floor-to-ceiling masterpieces of art. And why were those pieces put on the floor level at child height from the time I was a toddler? Because my dad wanted me to see beautiful things, and he wanted me to be curious and ask questions. So it was a really interesting childhood because I could walk up to a Renoir and look at it and ask questions about it. I could pick up an antiquity and play with it and not be told to put it down. So already I was given like a different idea of my place in the world. I was empowered as a child, right? Now, when I had to fight cancer and nothing was working, I had to figure out a strategy to keep myself alive. And the first one came from my father, which was this humorous mindset, this child playful spirit, because I was raised by a big kid, basically. And so I knew that comedy would be integral and the mindset would be integral of this fighter mindset. So my first research study was a mindset study. My second research study that I did, where the results are even greater and more impactful, that study was a health coach study. How did I stay alive when everyone told me I was dying? I looked at my life and I said, whoa, people don't necessarily die from cancer. They die from complications of cancer. So if I can do everything possible to keep every organ in my body healthy, I bet an organization like AACR, but I didn't know AACR at the time, can find the next big thing to attack my cancer, because researchers are doing this all over the world. And ironically, triple negative was in a lab. It's just when I was diagnosed in 99, nobody was talking about it, right? It wasn't until like 2005, I think. Right. So it was in a lab, but it wasn't down in the bench, right? It wasn't at bedside. It wasn't in the hospital. So I set out to keep every organ healthy while you guys figured out the science of the cancer. Right. And that's how I beat stage 4 cancer. I was so obsessed with making sure that I was doing everything possible for my liver, my kidneys, my heart, my brain, my skin, because it's a big organ, my pancreas. And so it didn't catch up with me the way it did my grandmother, right?
Yep.
Now I realized, okay, I teach this method. I've been teaching these 2 methods for decades, but on a smaller scale. So when I got my second research grant, I said, I want to do this study and I want to figure out if I can scale this so that I can help people who might not have the resources that I helped. And then can I convince insurance companies that if they do my study, they're going to spend a lot less money helping advanced cancer patients because they're not going to have hospital readmittance. And then hospitals will love it because they get paid more if you don't get readmitted. Right. So I figured out my angle, which was how I teach it. I figured out the financial angle that would then probably propel it, because I could show why it was so financially sound to do, but just humanistically, like, why wouldn't you want somebody, even if they have cancer, to be as healthy as possible and have the best quality of life while they're here?
Of course. Yeah.
Right? So we have the humanistic component. So in that second research study, we proved that in 8 weeks, with one health coach and my strategies together, we could dramatically change the quality of life as perceived by stage 4 cancer patients, men and women. And what's so riveting is that not one person was readmitted to the hospital in our 8 weeks with the most difficult kinds of cancer, from small towns to large cities, from coast to coast. So when I put this study out there, I got a call from AACR. You guys read my press releases. And the call was, you must expand the study right away. You have created a new continuum in the cancer care model. You can't sit on this. This could dramatically change the lives of people in the cancer system right away. And then I got a call from a hospital the same day saying, we want to put all our patients in your study. We want to do this right away. And I'm like, I'm full. And then everybody's so surprised, right? We have waiting lists. So they said, can we borrow your model without being in the study? And I'm like, God bless you. Go for it. So what I said very humbly to the person that contacted me from AACR was, this is my second study. I believe the results are going to be killer. They're going to be amazing. Let's just let me do it and let me stand on the results rather than go in and start telling everyone I have a new continuum in cancer care before hospice, right? So this study was for stage 4 cancer patients who were on active treatment, not yet in hospice. And it was crazy. We surveyed them 3 different times. And not only was it described, when asked to give one word, life-changing, groundbreaking, life-saving, just all the things you would think, but the actual statistics that we got on reduction of anxiety, 60%, that's insane. But improvement in pain management, like reduction in pain, reduction of intensity of pain, functioning, like increasing of activity, so accelerated. Every statistic was through the roof. And then the case studies show how we did it. And it was so simple, basically. Literally, we gave them a health coach for 1 hour of intake, and we asked them for 3 pain points that they were dealing with. Not their cancer, because they all have oncological teams, but what were the pain points that they were struggling with? So what you would think, right? Not being able to eat, nutrition, sleep, depression, sexual activity, was one. Just basic human needs that you would want to have addressed. But in all fairness, your oncological team is too busy. They can't go down there. So for 1 hour of intake plus intensive, we had them write a lot in. We had intensive history, and then they did baseline studies. Meeting with our expert, 30 minutes a week. That's it. 30 minutes to progress on these issues that they wanted help with. And then they could text us through a HIPAA compliant portal if they had questions. And then we put information into their personal portal based on questions that they had. So they could learn from videos, they could learn from handouts, but they didn't have to. That was all voluntary. And then I met with them live a few times throughout it to do more of the comedy piece. And then that was it. They did an exit, and then we surveyed them. And the impact on their health was very dramatic. But we didn't claim that. we were really just looking at quality of life.
Yep.
We weren't looking at how we were impacting the long-term health.
Mm-hmm.
So that study was done with an unbelievable functional medicine expert, Jackie Bryan. She's an RN, a certified nutrition specialist, whole health educator, and a certified health coach. She was at the epicenter of that. And so when it was over, they asked us not to end the study.
Mm-hmm.
They were begging us not to because of such improvements. And so we didn't have any more money. And I actually came to AACR and said, ethically, what do I do?
Right.
How we're out of the funding. This was a very small study. So that study is so ripe for expansion. And I feel that I have an obligation to the world and to cancer patients to make sure that we do a much bigger expanded study. And AACR has offered to help me prepare that. So those two studies really, as I said, were based out of this childhood. So what happened was this fighter spirit my dad gave me, this sense of humor, this questioning, this ability to think outside the box, right? And that came from the fact that his art collection was started because he was a young soldier in Paris and he saw a beautiful work of art that was on the black market. Mm-hmm. And he knew he couldn't buy it, even though they were trying to sell it to him for a pack of cigarettes or a pantyhose. Mm-hmm. But he knew it was stolen or looted from a home.
Right.
And so that propelled him to come back. He was at University of Pennsylvania on the GI Bill and start learning everything he could about what he saw on the streets of Paris in World War II. And so he became just an art expert and was considered to be a savant and considered to have one of the best eyes in the art world in private collection. Mm-hmm. But his collection was based on curiosity. Mm-hmm. It was based on inflection points. It was based on growth and experimentation. So all of that was just pounded into me growing up, but through this art lens. So my father—
It's fascinating stuff.
Thank you. He passed away with an extensive, world-class, very innovative, very expansive art collection that spans many continents. He was very interested also in female voice in art, and when people weren't even paying any attention to female artists.
Way ahead of his time.
And also tracking and picking movements before they became movements.
Right.
And then lastly, loving collaboration, like AACR, like Stand Up to Cancer. So this idea that two geniuses would collaborate together and greatly influence each other's style. And I had two pieces in the sale next to each other that greatly exhibited that. Mm-hmm. So this idea of how could this art and this idea of experimentation, inflection, helping others, how could this now possibly help people in the cancer world, right? So I decided that I was going to bring his ideas in the art world to light after 16 years by doing a global exhibition and use it as a way to teach people to look at art and life differently. And so we went to Paris, we went to New York, Chicago, came to Philadelphia, and I got this opportunity to teach through his art. But then I really thought that's not enough. Like, I wanted to do more good. And so I just decided that a percentage of the proceeds from 2 single owner sales, celebrating my dad's legacy in the art world and also keeping me alive with this mindset and this character and strength and spirit, that I would donate a percentage of the proceeds to improve the quality of life of cancer patients. And I have seen so many beautiful programs that not only AACR does, but people like me, just cancer patients that have a vision and do something really cool to impact other patients, that this money could then help propel other people forward with their visions and really create better quality of life for survivors. As you know, survivorship is extraordinary now, the numbers and how long we're living. I mean, I'm 31 years since I'm misdiagnosed, and there are complications that happen in survivorship. And I love that Dr. Barker and Dr. Foti are really starting to pay attention and are really trying to muscle dollars to create programs in survivorship. And I want a seat at that table too. And so I said, okay, well, you got to also put your money where your mouth is, right? Like I do the sweat equity piece, right? I get up every day and I do this to help patients and survivors and caregivers and medical professionals. But I think I could do more. And that's what AACR opened my eyes to, that as a patient, I can do more. I can do more in all these areas, and I can do it on a global level. And if you look back at all your podcasts, what I think is interesting is if you look at Ricky, you look at Melissa, you look at Doug, there were a few of us. We all had expertise in communication. You see, like one after the next when you were exploring their history. So we are communicators. We are mouthpieces. But if you are not, you can partner with someone else in your inner circle. I mean, Haley had a team of women from a play group. I was early on because they brought Nancy Kenna to me before they even thought a triple negative, right? So be careful what you wish for because it can really happen.
Right. Well, like I told you a couple of weeks ago, your dad is I'm sure your father's very, very proud of what you've done and what lessons you've learned and taken to help make an impact in the world. So I think that's a really important thing. Last question for someone listening who might be facing their own health challenges. What advice would you give them about finding their, quote, funny bone and purpose during their difficult times?
That could be an hour, but we're going to make it fast. I'm sorry. Let's do this. You know, we didn't talk about the fact that I really have this daily podcast that is helping people around the world. What's mind-boggling is I found out this morning that we are in the Ukraine and in Russia.
Wow.
That we are in Israel, Pakistan, Jordan, United Arab Emirates, and Iraq.
Yeah, and we will put all that up on the notes so people know how to get to that podcast and to learn more about the foundation as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Beating Cancer Daily is wherever you listen to podcasts. But what's so cool about it is that I took all the lessons that I taught in the 2 research studies and all the things I teach in a keynote and when I go and work wherever I'm working in the world to share this message. And I broken it down into micro habits so that every single day you can get a small bit of this journey. So we do call it tumor humor. You can explore that. If you like coping strategies better, mental health strategies, they're there. If you want quality of life strategies, it's there. The podcast is like being in my crazy brain and laughing and having fun. And we always try to mix healthcare and humor together. So it's light, fast, and quick.
I got a sample of it this morning. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Let me end with I'll try another tumor humor so we can laugh at cancer.
And I'll give you one too.
Okay, so they say the cancer card beats everything, but my blackjack dealer clearly didn't get that memo. All right. And you finish us off.
I'm so used to having scans that when I went through airport security today, I accidentally laid down with my bags.
Well, Saranne, what a story, what a life, a continuing impact that you're making. It's going to keep going and going and going, I have a feeling.
God willing.
And we're so appreciative that you shared your stories and information with our audience. and probably have to have you back at some point in time if you're willing.
Oh, we could do part two.
We probably could.
I'll bring the funny.
There's no doubt about that. But so honored to have you here today, and thank you so much for all you do for AACR and for everybody out there in the world, just not cancer world, but the world in general. So thanks so much for being here. High five. All right. As we wrap up this uplifting episode of the Believe in Progress podcast, I want to extend my sincerest gratitude to Saranne Rothberg for joining us today and sharing the incredible journey of ComedyCures. Saranne's story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the healing power of laughter. Through her foundation, she has touched the lives of over 1 million people, proving that joy and hope can flourish even in the face of adversity. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being part of this important conversation. Your support helps us to continue to spotlight the heroes in the fight against cancer and spread messages of hope and resilience. For more information about Saranne's work and how you can get involved with the ComedyCures Foundation, please check out our show notes. Remember, laughter is an essential part of healing and well-being. Let's carry forward the message of hope, humor, and happiness in our lives and communities. Stay tuned for more episodes that celebrate progress, innovation, and the power of the human connection in overcoming cancer. Thank you for listening to the Believe in Progress podcast. Until next time, keep believing in progress and the difference we can make together.